Greetings, beloved, and welcome to our Wholesome Wednesday here on Mercy Abounds platform. Thank you so much for your engagement on our YouTube channel. We really appreciate your feedback. Now, we had a wonderful week as we are reflecting on David and his charge that he was giving to the people. And as we are reflecting, we're asking ourselves, um, how would it look like if we were given the privilege, right, to give the charge? Because some of us, we lost our loved ones in circumstances where they couldn't give any charge or have any last remarks. So if you are privileged to actually have the last remarks, what would you say? We're reflecting on all those things. And today we continue. We are on the book of Kings. We agreed that the book of Kings was one, but it was split in two. Now, as we continue on this book, we are going to realize how the kings in the past were behaving versus how, when they came into power, the things that they agreed to, and how, when they are now in power, how they move further away from the ideals, and more so how they further away move from God. And because they've moved away from God, they lose the plot altogether. And we're also going to realize how sometimes we judge the kings or the presidents or the leaders, how we judge them because we do not know much what is happening in the palace. Now we're going to have a privilege of looking into what is the dynamics that are in the palace and why sometimes the leaders behave the way they do, though they might not disclose the whole information. Now we are on chapter 2 of 1 Kings. David is now talking to Solomon, and he is having his last remarks with Solomon. Before we get there, I just want us to reflect on the leadership of David, or to look at the different phases that David went through and how consistent God was. First, we have David as the shepherd boy, as we reflect how God came through for him, and he would sometimes have this power to kill the lions and open their jaws and tear them apart, and how he killed Goliath, and all these dynamics, and he is coming in as the young shepherd boy, but God is consistent in his life. And there is this time where there is anointing that is happening, and he's supposed to be anointed, he's not there, and all the brothers are put in the lineup, and no one bothers to say, but David is not there, until Samuel has seen all the brothers and say, are they all? Because the one that I'm supposed to anoint is not here. And then that's when they remember, oh, there is David, the shepherd boy, who's not here. And apparently he's the one who's supposed to be anointed. So David, in this stage, God is doing marvelous things. He is having his life in the wilderness with the animals, but his heart is with the Lord. And then he moves to be David the warrior, and he is so much into war. He fights. At the end, we hear that God says David can't build him a house or can't build the Lord the sanctuary because his hands are full of blood. So he's this warrior that is going out there, and he's got this strength and this wisdom, right? And he is known that when he goes to fight, they always win. Of course, this stage of him as a warrior, that's where Bathsheba comes in, and this sin that comes in. And God says David is the man after my own heart. After even he had done all this, God still looks at David and he says David is a man after my own heart. We see David after this warrior period, David reaching great heights. He still has his wings, but when you read the strides now after the sin, he doesn't reach the highest that he had reached before in terms of God working with him and doing miraculous works, right? We see David seemingly what we would call in our layman having clipped, his wings having been clipped because of what he did, but God forgave him, right? And then David, now he's David the king, and he's in power, and there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot that is happening in David's life. And whilst there is so much that is happening from outside, from within, it's actually a lot. There's a lot of turmoil and chaos that makes us understand why sometimes the leaders behave the way they do. They might not necessarily be able to tell us the kind of chaos that is within, because we are going to judge them. But then maybe it makes them not to make the right calculated moves, because they also have pressure from within. Now we are having David. 70-year-old David, he's been king, he's been the leader of Israel for the past 40 years. And now 70 years, he's about to die. And he's talking to Solomon, perhaps now he's around 17 or so years of age. And David, as he's talking to Solomon, you would understand that as a youth, that young man is listening, and there's this role or that he has to play as a king that awaits him, and he thinks he's ready. But of course, he then realizes when he's on the ground that, okay, he is not as ready as he thought. Now, also, when David is handing over this throne, there is a lot that David is also handing over to Solomon. That is also going to have his own challenges separate from David, but he is also handing a lot of grudges, a lot of revenges that Solomon must make sure that he executes in his time. So David is now talking to, and he tells him that, you know what, you have to remain faithful. Do not be afraid. Be of good cheer. Be strong. Be courageous. The Lord is going to be with you as long as you walk in the ways of the Lord. The Lord is going to be with you. David is trying to tell him that great responsibility, great work comes with, needs a lot of courage, right? Needs a lot of courage, needs a lot of good cheer. And you cannot do this good courage and good cheer outside God. And this good courage and this good cheer comes from following what the Lord says you should do. Comes from listening to the Lord's commandments, to the Lord's laws, to the Lord's principles. It comes from living by the principles of God. That's where you get the courage and the cheer from. It doesn't come outside of that. So David is talking to Solomon, and Solomon, yeah, he is getting it, but he's not getting it. Why am I saying that? You understand later on that David, as David is talking to Solomon, he might be hearing or he might not be hearing what David is saying. Because later on, we realize that Solomon dies actually doing or worshipping idols worse than Pharaoh, right? He is having slaves and treating them worse than Pharaoh. So Solomon is hearing or he is not hearing. So whilst we're reflecting on if we were to be given the privilege of saying our last remarks, what would we say, right? How about we flip and say, if we're given the privilege to be with our loved ones as they have their last remarks, how far binding are the words that they're going to say unto us? Are they going to be in our lives? How far are we going to keep and live by these principles or live by this charge that we have been given? As soon as these people die, whatever charge that they gave us is thrown out the window. Because Solomon is given clear, follow the statutes. But the way he was into idol and idol worship, you would think that he didn't know that there is a God in heaven. So how far as us human beings, if we flip and we say, if we have the privilege to sit by the feet of our loved ones, if they were, when it's now their time to rest, if we're that privileged to sit there and they give us the charge, how far are we willing to live by the statutes? How far are we willing to live by the remarks? How far are we willing to live by, right, the statutes that we've been given by our loved ones who would obviously have called us to come back to the Lord? How far are we willing to live by those things? How long? Or as soon as they are gone, it's out of our minds. Because it also doesn't help to just have the last remarks if you are having these last remarks with people that are not even listening, right? So now David is talking to Solomon. He's telling him that you have to live by the principles of God if you are intending to be of good courage. If you are intending to take on this huge responsibility, you have to live by the principle. He's talking from experience, right? His relationship with God was good. So he knows that I might not be able to preempt everything that is going to happen. But from my knowledge, I know that you're going to. If you have the Lord, whatever you're going to face, you're covered. And then David starts listing his enemies. Here, David also is handing over the enemies. Hey, my guy, some of them I didn't manage to deal with them, right? Yeah, there are people like Shimei. Shimei, when I'm fighting with Absalom, Absalom is, Absalom tried to also have a coup with David, right? And David runs away, and Absalom is seemingly taking charge. And when that is happening, Shimei, that's where Shimei comes in, he's kicking the ground when he's saying, David say, yeah, you're so weak, you're not the king is Absalom, you're very weak. And is laughing at David when all that is happening. And David is not amused. And then after some time, when Shimei realizes, so Absalom is lost, David is coming back, and he's going to continue as the king. So here, Mr. Sir King, can you forgive me? You are the king. You are the king. And David says, it's fine. I'm not going to kill you. It's fine. I make a promise. I'm not going to kill you. But here, David, on his deathbed, years later, David still has this grudge. And he says to Solomon, hey, my guy, I have this man called Shimei that I promised that I'm not going to kill. But now on my deathbed, you're gonna kill him. You can kill him. You can kill him. What he did was wrong. He's gonna disturb you. He's got an unruly spirit. You just gotta kill the guy, right? You kill the guy. And then there's Joab and Abiathar. These guys are problematic. When I was fighting with Absalom, they were okay. But when Adonijah was doing all this, they supported Adonijah. You remember? So you gotta keep a close eye on these guys. They're gonna be a problem. Adonijah, I don't have to mention. This guy is gonna be problematic. So David is listing, and is also listing those that did good, right? He's listing that so and so did this to me, and you have to be kind. You have to extend kindness to them. I didn't live to, make sure that them in their household they are comfortable, because they were very kind to me when Absalom was trying to have this coup with me. At one point, I was staying far away from home in the bush, and these people kept on bringing food unto me. They were very kind. So remember to be kind unto them. And then, so can you imagine this is being told to a youth? A youth is listening to this with great zeal. And I'm sure when the father is passing on the revenge, he feels the blood in his veins boiling, right? He takes it as it is and inherits that anger and inherits that he wants to revenge as well. But also Solomon must do this because he knows that the kingdom, his throne, right, is in danger as long as these people that David has mentioned are still alive. So it happens that Joab, right, and Abiathar, obviously, these guys, they will make a mistake. It starts with Adonijah. Adonijah comes through. Now David is dead. David dies and is buried in Jerusalem. Of course, we don't know. We haven't discovered yet, or any that I know of, where we know where David, exactly where he was buried. But he was buried in Jerusalem. Now, David is dead. Adonijah never, it doesn't have a dull moment. He comes through and says, I want to talk to Bathsheba. Bathsheba, can I see you? Bathsheba says, oh, sure, come through. And Bathsheba says, do you come in peace? Because the last time this guy was in public space, he was causing chaos and almost took over my son's throne. So, are you coming in peace? And Adonijah says, yeah, I'm coming in peace. He comes and then he says, so I will ask you to grant me this request. So Bathsheba says, go on. Says, I would like to have Abishag, the Shunammite woman, as my wife. So who is Abishag? Abishag, remember, this is the lady, the virgin that was taken in to come and warm the king when David was too old and was keeping cold. It was very cold. So they had to bring this lady to come and warm David. But there's nothing that happened between David and this woman. She was just coming in to keep David So her name is Abishag. So this is the woman. David is dead. She remains in the palace. She's now the property, part and parcel of the property of the palace. She can't go anywhere. Now, Adonijah comes and talks to Bathsheba and says, go and ask for me from Solomon that I want to take Abishag as my wife. You would wonder, but why, Adonijah, are you wanting Abishag? Out of all the women, you just causing. Why? Because back then it was known that a king, if they are fighting and the king is overthrown, whoever is coming in to take over, the successor takes everything, including the wives, the children, everything in the palace. So what Adonijah is saying, in short, he's saying, if he is having Abishag as the wife, which means he becomes the king. This is a coup, another coup that is planning in quotes, another coup in quotes. So obviously Solomon is saying, but he can't do that. I mean, Abiathar and Joab wanted him to be king. They might as well get the kingdom, right? They might as well take the kingdom and take the throne, because how can he take Abishag to be his wife? It doesn't make sense. And he requests that he be killed. Solomon is starting his own exploits now. He wants to make sure that when he sends a message, people listen. Adonijah is killed. His brother is killed. Right. So now we have Adonijah dead. Then Joab, obviously, and Abiathar, they have their own drama. And then Abiathar is told, okay, I'm not going to kill you, but you're going to stay. He's told where he's going to stay. Joab is killed. Of course, is killed, and it was painful for Joab. Can you imagine the hitman being killed in the sanctuary, right? He couldn't defend himself. There comes a time, no matter how tough, as long as you are not doing right, your time will come. The way he is killed and the way he used to have exploits and kill, and he was a warrior, this guy. But the way he is killed now at the end of his life, it's so painful. Right? And then we have, obviously, Shimei. Shimei, remember, we spoke about Shimei, the one who was laughing at David when Absalom was planning his coup. And then he sees that, Absalom has lost, so David is going to come back and be king. And he says, you know what, I'm sorry, king, can you forgive me? And then David says, I'm not going to kill you. But David makes sure that revenge is going to be executed through Solomon. And Solomon had made actually an agreement with Shimei. You don't go out of this place. You don't go anywhere. Right? You stay here at this place where we have agreed. And they agree. Someday his servants run away and he follows them. And Solomon gets to hear that he went, and Solomon calls him. What did you do? I told you not to do this thing. He kills Shimei. So Solomon comes into this chaos, and to clear all this chaos, Solomon just kills. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. And as we are processing all these things, he has to kill from within Adonijah, his brother. He has to kill from very close Joab. Remember, Joab is somehow cousins. And the priest, and all these people that he's killing within a short space of time, and as he's coming in, because he is trying to defend his throne. He is realizing that all these people are a threat. And also I have to set the record straight. People have to know that if I say something, I keep my word. Shimei, I told you not to move, you moved. Joab, I told you this, you moved. Abiathar, I told you this, you moved. So he is also trying to protect. But I also laughed when Bathsheba is being approached by Adonijah. Bathsheba knows that this thing does not work. And she also wants to take this. If she knew that it meant death. When she's carrying this message to Solomon that Adonijah wants to take Abishag as wife, she knows that this will make Adonijah to be killed, because this is a problematic statement on its own. And Bathsheba wants that. So she makes sure that she takes the message to Solomon so that Solomon gets to deal with this guy once and for all. So now, there's a verse in the book of May that says, a house that is divided against itself would definitely fall. Perhaps that's what Solomon wanted to establish. These divisions, he wanted to take them out. Sometimes we see leaders removing people in spaces and we think it's unfair. They are trying to protect the company. They are trying to protect everyone else. And sometimes we ourselves, we become that stumbling block between the company and its progress. And we become the ones that are on the firing line. So let us be careful and be mindful. As we are reading the book of Kings, let us see where we as a people, we also find ourselves in the firing lines because we are not doing things that are right. Let us also identify things as leaders that we can learn. What are some of the things that we can learn as we continue as leaders? We are seeing a lot of killings, and the world over, there's a lot of wars, presidents, leaders, politicians, killing, scheming. These things are still happening today. We should not find ourselves on the firing line, but we should at the same time be reverent when we are choosing these leaders, because we need a leader that fears the Lord. So when we are picking it could be in a church setup, it could be in a work setup, it could be in a national political kind of setup, we still need the Lord, because we heard today that a leader needs good courage and good cheer, and those come from following or living by the principles of God. If we live outside of that, we've lost it. So let us continue to engage. Let's continue to share. What are your thoughts on this chapter? This chaos, and this father passing revenge to the son. What do you say? And Adonijah coming wanting, after realizing that it's the Lord who has put Solomon on this throne. But he is still, when David is dead, he is still going to trample Solomon. That he wants Abishai, and yet he knows what that means. What is it that you could advise here at this point? These children that are fighting each other. What could David have done? What could have been done to save Adonijah? There is a lot of chaos and confusion in this chapter, and it's unfortunate. It ends with a lot of people dead. Could these people have been saved? Could there have been another approach that could have saved these people? What are the lessons that we learn so that we don't find ourselves on the firing line? From us, Maisie and Vons, we can't wait to hear your feedback and your thoughts on this chapter. Let us continue engaging.